So now let's see the CRUD application that you'll be building in this two-part series of lectures. All right, so your finished product will look like this. Now, continuing with what we'll be covering in this two-part series, and I am just taking the first part, one part at a time. The next part, the part 2, will be about building the front end Angular. So, first of all, we'll discuss the mean stack architecture, and then we'll see getting started with the prerequisites and building the server-side Node.js application, installing dependencies, creating an employee interface server-side and connect to the database, and then build the prerequisites for this tutorial series. First of all, you need to have Node.js and MongoDB Atlas cluster installed, and you can visit https://nodejs.org to download and install Node.js. And if you are new to MongoDB Atlas cluster, please follow this YouTube tutorial to create one MongoDB Atlas cloud cluster free of cost. This is my YouTube video, which I will also put in the description. So, introduction out of the way, my friends. So let's get our hands dirty by opening this Visual Studio Code. Okay, and I have created a directory final in which I am going to start my application. So what we will do is I will open a integrated terminal, so which is control backtick hotkey. So yeah, so this is terminal, integrated terminal. So this is my final directory. So I will issue a command. For making directory, new directory. Okay, so now, and I will change my directory to this newly created directory, mean. Right, after doing this, I will create a server directory. So this is already created. Now within this mean stack example, I will create a directory or folder, new folder, because I am using Visual Studio Code. So it's all very easy. I don't need to issue any command. So I will create a directory called server, or a folder called server. All right. And then within this server, I will create another file, another folder which is source folder. Okay, new folder, src. This is the source folder. So mean stack, server, source. All right, so these are all empty at the moment, there are no files. So now I will change directory to server, cd server. Okay, so now my change directory is, cursor has come to the server. Okay, so I will issue a command which is npm node package manager, npm init y Now what this npm init y does, it creates a package.json in the source folder, src folder. And if you click on this, this will be the same thing. Name server, version, description, main is index.js, scripts, test. no test specified, and exit. This is the by default template. Author name is not there. License, you can write your own name or whatever license if you have, like MIT license or any other kind of license that you'd like to create for this application, you can write over there. Okay, this is package.json. This is basically holding all the dependencies for this server side. Okay, so next I will create within this server, I will create a file tsconfig.json. Okay, so server create a new file, basically file within the server directory. So tsconfig.json, I'll come to that in a later. Okay, so basically that's on the root mean stack, that's the server folder, tsconfig.json. And then I will come to source, cd source directory, and then within the source directory I will create a few files which are just bear with me, just follow me if you'd like. Add new file. The first of them is database.ts. okay, ts for TypeScript, and another file, new file, employee.routes.ts or routes.ts, employee.routes.ts, and another is on the source itself. Just click on source and then click on new file, employee.ts, and then another file, finally server.ts. These are all TypeScript files. Okay, so a quick talk about TypeScript. TypeScript simplifies JavaScript code, making it easier to read and debug. TypeScript is open source and it provides highly productive development tools for JavaScript IDEs and practices like static checking, and TypeScript makes code easier to read and understand. So you can look for any suitable resource about TypeScript if you are first time to Angular or TypeScript. That would be highly desirable. Now next we will be needing a few external packages to build the RESTful API and to connect to our MongoDB Atlas cluster. Let's install them using the npm install command, which is npm install command, which is on my clipboard to save time, and I'll hit on enter, and it is installing those course.environment, Express and MongoDB. So we'll come back once these packages are installed by Node Package Manager npm. You can see it is still installing those 4 packages. It takes a wee bit of time, so we'll have to be patient about that. So I'll come back once these packages are all installed, and the next thing I'll be using is to install TypeScript for our server application. Okay, so we'll be installing the TypeScript compiler and supporting types packages as development dependencies using the save dev flag, which will come in a. Now you see these packages are all added 80 packages and audited 81 packages in 2 minutes. So okay, now we'll issue this command npm install # save dev TypeScript, okay, and whatever, and then we'll click enter. It will also take a few minutes and we'll come back again. Now as these TypeScript libraries or TypeScript compiler is getting installed, let's quickly come back to package.json file that was created earlier, and you'll see that these are the dependencies added with the incoming packages like dependencies, course.env, express, MongoDB, and dev dependencies at types course, at types express, at types node, TS node, and TypeScript. So now we can understand that we are successful in getting all these dependencies into our application. All right. Now let's come back to our tsconfig.json file which we have created, and this is empty, and I won't bore you with typing everything in front of you, and I'll just copy and paste. I have already copied and it is going to paste. Okay, so you can quickly see that it has got a compiler options. So this is all JSON file, module ES module interrupt true, target ES6, no implicit any true, output directory dist base URL dot allow js true. So okay, so this is the TS TypeScript config file. Now next step is to create an employee interface on the server side. Okay, since we are building an employee management app, the main data unit is the employee. All right, so let's create an employee interface that will be used to define the structure of the employee object. So what you will do is that the code that I have got on my clipboard, this one, import star as MongoDB from MongoDB and export interface employee. This is the standard notation for any Angular application. Export, if it is an interface, export interface, the interface name, and then if it is a class, then export class or employee or whatever, and then here is the content of this interface: name string, position string, level junior, mid, or senior. This is an enum, and ID is MongoDB.objectID. Basically this will be filling our employee database on the MongoDB, which we'll come to later. So our employees should have a name, position, and level. The ID field is optional because it is generated by MongoDB. So when we are creating a new employee, we don't need to specify it. However, when you get an employee object from the database, it will have an underscore ID field populated. Next, we will be connecting to the database. So we'll already created database.ts and we'll paste some code over there. So this is a bit of a code. So again, I have chosen not to type everything in front of you. You can follow me, and I'll put this entire working application in GitHub. Okay, so there shouldn't be much problem. So basically it is importing a few things: import star as MongoDB from MongoDB, import employee component from star.employee from /employee, okay, employee.ts, and then export const collection employees question mark. Question mark means if it is null, then it will be undefined, otherwise it will be MongoDB.collection employee equal to an empty array, and then export async function connect to database URI string, client is new MongoDB.MongoDB client URI you will get from as a parameter, and this is an asynchronous function, so await client.connect, and then const db equals client. This is the client. It has created a MongoDB client, and client.database mean stack example. Now we'll come to that in a minute. So await apply schema validation, and then const employee collection. Employees collection is database.collection of type employee, and within double quotes employees. Okay, and this employees collection is collections dot employees is assigned the employees collection. So basically we are using the MongoDB Node.js driver distributed as the MongoDB npm package. Okay, so first we create a new Mongo client object. This is the client with the provided connection string. This is the connection string, which will come to a bit. Then we connect to the database. Okay, then we connect to the database. After that, we get the database object from the client object. From the client object, we get the database object. Here I wanted to point out that const db, the database object, we'll get from the client by calling this database function and passing the database name, mean stack example. Now what this does, if I put it on the cursor, mouse over, it creates a new DB instance sharing the current socket connection, and the parameter is the DB name. This is the DB name. Now this DB name is the name of the database we want to use if not provided, and if it is not provided, use the database name from the connection string. But our connection string is this. Here it does not show any database name, so it will use this database name. This one means, what was there, mean stack example. It will create a database. Okay, so we use this object to get the employees collection. Okay, we use this object to get the employees collection. Okay, note that the variable employees is cast to the employee interface. It is cast to the employee interface. Okay, so this will provide type checking to any query we send to the database. Finally, we assign the employees collection to the collections object. Okay, collections.employees is the employees collection, and which is exported from this file. That way we can access the employees collection from other files such as employee.roots.ts file, which will implement in our RESTful API. We are also using JSON schema. Okay, apply schema validation. This is JSON schema validation to ensure that all of our documents follow the shape of a employee interface, and this is a good practice to ensure that we don't accidentally store data that doesn't match the shape of our model. Now we'll be persisting our data to a MongoDB Atlas cluster. To connect to our cluster, we'll need to set an Atlas URI environment variable that contains a connection string. So I will now talk about the Atlas cluster that I have created for this application. So this is my Atlas cloud. Okay, MongoDB Atlas cloud deployment Atlas cluster. So I have already created this. This is the cluster 0. First of all, you have to create an organization. This is the organization, my MongoDB Atlas, and this is a project. So everything is nicely covered in the tutorial that I have linked in initial slides, and I will put it in the description of this video. And then connect. If you click on connect, what happens is that you have got a few options. Connect with MongoDB shell, connect your application, and connect using MongoDB Compass. So if you click on this one, if I go back, connect your application. So this is the one. This is the Node.js driver version 4.1 or later, and this is the code that I need to copy. Okay, so once I have copied this, so I have to replace, this is my username KRCOM, and password I have to replace with my password without these angular brackets, and this is the whatever the cluster is, cluster URI. So if I close this, it will be used just in a bit. So I will bring back my Visual Studio code editor. Now what I will be doing within this server, the source, there is a server directory, mean stack example and server. I'll create a file, new file, and name it this environment variable file .env. Okay, and in this I will paste this code. First of all, let me paste this connection string, and my password was, it is not encrypted though. Okay, and then this is actually Atlas URI. So I leave it as it is and then save this, Control S. So mongodb.srv:// my username, password, and whatever I got from that connection string. So where did I get this password from? So again, I have come back to MongoDB cluster and I have clicked on this database users tab, and if I click on edit and password is highlighted, and if I click on edit password and if I click on show, that will show my password. Okay, so I'm good. That's my password. All right. Now we can load the environment variables using the .env package. So we can do that in any file, but it is a good practice to do it as early as possible. Since server.ts file will be our entry point, let's load the environment variable. From it, connect to the database and start the server. So let's bring server.ts file, which is empty at the moment, and I paste the code which is on my clipboard, and I will briefly explain. So import course from course. Import. So these are squiggly lines were present, which now I have removed. Is that I have erroneously created this .env or environment variable file within the source directory. It has to be created on the server. Okay, so I have moved it into the server. So if I just collapse source, you can see that it is outside the source folder. So this is on the server folder. So and it has taken care of this those squiggly lines. All right. So now there are no squiggly lines which were there earlier on the course or Express. Now our application is pretty much, the backend is actually ready to run. Now if everything is all right, let's run the app and see if everything works. Okay, so we'll issue this command. Again, I'll bring the terminal, control and backtick. Okay, so mean stack example. And again cd to server and issue this command, source npx ts dot source / server dot ts, and let's wait and see. So server is running at http localhost : port number 5200. So that's fine, good job. Now we are ready to build the RESTful API for our employees. So now we'll implement a get, post, put and delete endpoint for our employees. As you can notice that these HTTP methods correspond to the CRUD operation, create, read, update and delete. So we'll be performing on our employees in the database. The only caveat is that we'll have two get endpoints, one for getting all employees and one for getting a single employee by ID. To implement the endpoints, we use the router provided by Express. The file we'll be working on is source/employee.router.ts. So this is employee.router.ts. So this is source/employee.router.ts. All right, routes.ts rather. So let's start by implement a get employees endpoint, which will allow us to get all the employees in the database. So I'll copy this code, which is pretty easy to go through to understand. We are using find method. Okay, so we are using find method because we are passing an empty object. This is the empty object, that is yes, empty object. This is a curly brace, pair of empty curly brace. We'll get all the employees in the database. All right, We'll then use toArray method to convert the cursor to an array. Okay, it is telling returns an array of documents. Finally, we'll send the array of employees to the client. You may notice that root is front slash. Okay, that is the route. Okay, this is the front slash. So this is get iRouter. So this is the front slash. This is because we'll register all endpoints from this file under the front slash employees route. Okay. Now get employees ID. We'll implement the get front slash employees front slash ID endpoint, which will allow us to get a single endpoint, single employee by ID, and we'll append the following code to the bottom of the same file. Okay, so I have again copied it on my clipboard, and this is the ID. This will find an employee by ID. The ID of employee is provided as a parameter. This is provided as a parameter. We'll use the object ID. This is the object ID method to convert the string ID to a MongoDB object ID. Okay. So we then use the find one method to find the employee with the given ID. Okay. If the employee is found, then we'll send it to the client. If the response.status is 200, then send the employee. Otherwise, fail to find an employee with this ID. Response status is 404. 404 not found error. Okay. Catch error. So if the try block fails, then the error catch block is there, and it says fail to find an employee with this ID. Okay. So basically this part, else part, is almost the same as the error part. Alright, except it has got a ID required, params required, dot ID. So this, if it is not request question mark dot params question mark not required, request question mark and params question mark. So this, if it is not found, then it is undefined. Okay. All right. So this question mark symbol represents, in some of the expressions above, it's optional chaining operator. This is called also the optional chaining operator. It enables you to read the value of a nested property without throwing an error. If the property does not exist, instead of throwing an error, the expression evaluates to undefined. Now we'll go for the post employees. So on the same file, I paste the code for the post. So this is again employees.employee.routes.ts. So this is post. Okay. So what it does, we receive the employee object from the client in the request body, and then we'll use insert one. Where is insert one? Insert one. Insert one method to insert the employee into the database. Inserts a single document into the MongoDB. If documents passed in do not contain the ID field, one will be added to each of the documents, missing it by the driver. Okay. If the insertion is successful, we will send a 201 response, created a new employee with the ID of the employee. Otherwise, we'll send a 500 internal server error, failed to create a new employee. Next comes the put employee with a ID. That means if we want to edit an employee, certain ID. So again, going back to the end of this file, we'll paste another section of the code for the put. All right. So this is very similar to the post. The difference being the ID of the employee is provided as a parameter, whereas the employee object is provided in the request body. Employee object is provided in the request body. So const employee equals request.body. Okay. We use the object ID method to convert the string ID to a Mongo object ID. Again, new MongoDB.object ID, passing the ID which I received from the parameter, And then we use the update one method to update the employee with the given ID. If the update is successful, we'll send a 200 OK response. Otherwise, we'll send a 304 not modified, failed to update an employee response. Finally, we'll come to the delete an employee with a particular ID. So again, at the end of this last section, we will put another code for finally the delete part. Now, similar to the previous endpoints, we send a query to the database based on the ID passed as a parameter. We use the delete one method here, delete one, to delete the employee. If the deletion is successful, we'll send a response status of 202, removed an employee. Otherwise, we'll send a 400 error response, failed to remove an employee. And if the response is 404, that means it is failed to find an employee with that ID. Okay. Now next we'll have to register the routes. So register the routes, we'll have to add some code on the server.ts part. So you will use this import statement, import employee router from /employee.routes. Save this. Now this says that this is declared, but its value is never used. So here we'll use it before the app.listen. Okay, before this app.listen, we'll use this one, app.use. After app.use calls, we'll write this line of code, app.use, and within a pair of curly braces, we'll put / employees, and then the second parameter to this use function is employee router, which is employee router, this one, which is imported from /employee.routes. Okay, employee router, and then semicolon, then save. All right, now we can again run this application by stopping the shell process with. Okay, let's close this application, terminate, Control C and yes to terminate the batch job, and then again the npx ts mode. If everything is fine, it should similarly say that the server is running. We'll come back again. We are successful again. So let's, if I hover over, you can see it shows follow the link. If I click follow the link, it will get me to can't get because I have not given the route. So it is employees. So I have got these employees already on my database from a previous operation. So name Kaushik, position IT developer, level mid Ramesh Arora. Now this is in sync in the same page if I show you my Atlas cluster. Okay, so let me go back to the Atlas cluster. So database deployment again on MongoDB Atlas, then browse collections. So finally it has fetched mean stack examples .employees collection. So these are the ID, name, position, level, 3 persons were there. So our back-end server is ready and up and running. So next part of the series, so this part is finished. Now in the part 2, I'll create the Angular front-end application.